Okay, so we're starting. So, anyways, this week's parsha is Chukas and Balak. So I want to start off with learning Parshas Chukas inside to try to understand what we know and what we don't know about Paraduma. So it's one of the most fascinating halachas, fascinating concepts in the Torah altogether. It's B'tama Tahirim, it's B'tahar Tmeim, and just about as much as you think you understand something, the Torah comes and tells you that you don't understand anything. Also, B'chlal. Someone asked you a question. How is it that you could understand a book that was written by Hashem? Yeah, we discussed yesterday in the Mishnah that somebody just says that Torah is lav min hashemayim, so he's apikairis, right? But how could you claim that you understand something that was written by Hashem? Yeah. So it was once it was brought down into this world. It's a chacham elokis. This is not something physical. But the Maral explains as a davar pashut that if a person has a neshama, it's automatic that he should be able to understand the Torah, because the neshama is seichel and the Torah is sichlius. So it should be automatically and simply that a person who has a neshama, which we spoke about yesterday, should be able to connect to something that's seichel eliki. It's very pashut.
More to eat.
What?
More to drink.
Fine. So let's start the parsha. Let's see what the pasuk says.
If you need more milk, and please do me a favor, bring it up in the dungeon. So you use this bag.
Vayidaber Hashem al Moshe vel Aaron lemar. Hashem spoke to Moshe and Aaron saying, "This chukas haTorah. This is the chayk of the Torah. Asher tiva Hashem lemar, that Hashem spoke to you, that Hashem commanded you to say, Dabro b'nei Yisrael, speak to b'nei Yisrael. V'yichu elecha, you should take for you, para aduma, a red heifer, right? Red cow. Tamima, complete. What does tamima mean? Asher ein b'mum, that it doesn't have a blemish. What are the mumen? So the mumen are, there's a list in Mishnayos and Bechayros that goes through all the different mumen. There's mumen for animals, which would passel an animal for a carbon, and there's mumen that would passel a kayan. Not only would a mum passel a kayan, but if a person wants to marry somebody, and that person has that kind of mum, he could say, well, I don't want to marry him because I don't want to marry her because he or she has that kind of mum, and I feel uncomfortable living with such a person. Asher loy ola ola ha'oil.
And another excuses.
What?
Why does he have to give excuses? If he doesn't want to get married, he doesn't have to.
Well, let's say sometimes where a person would be mechuyev to marry such a person. Let's say a classic example would be yibum or einus mefata, one of these kind of things where a person mechuyev to live with that woman, right? Or it could be that they already know each other and they already just about want to marry each other, but then they find out that there's some kind of illness over there or some kind of mum over there, then that's it. Okay. So asher ein b'mum, it doesn't have any blemish. Asher loy ola ola ha'oil, that a yoke never went on it. If a yoke would go on the paraduma, it would make it puzzle. What?
What's a yoke? The yoke.
What's a yoke? So we're not so familiar with what a yoke is. Well, let me just explain as davar pashut that when you plow with the cow, right? So what happens is that you have to attach the plow to the cow. You have to hook it up. So there was the way to hook it up was that you would put something around the neck of the animal, and by putting that thing around the neck of the animal, it's called an oil, right? We say, let's say, like oil malchus shemayim, right? It's a certain responsibility and obligation that we have.
A muzzle?
No, a muzzle's on the mouth that it shouldn't eat. Oil is to be able to carry the plow or to carry a load or to carry a wagon, to schlep something with it. So by putting oil on it, that's what's going to passel the paraduma. So again, what are the halachas that the first pasuk mentions? Besides the fact that it's a chayk, we don't understand.
Because you're making it work. That's all.
Yeah. Even if it doesn't do any work, just putting it on it, it sounds like from the pasuk that would be an issue. But let's see. We'll see in Rashi. We'll see a little bit more what the story is. Okay, it has to be aduma tamima, right? We're very familiar with that. Even if it has just two black hairs apostles, right?
One is fine.
And one is fine. There are other. It's like it's Tanam in Mishnayos Para. There's some Tanam hold that even if it has more than two, it's still fine as long as it's not right next to each other. Obviously, it needs to have very thorough. It needs to go through a very thorough checking to make sure that everything is everything's okay with it.
I saw one like 2 weeks ago.
You saw one like 2 weeks ago.
I went for a Shabbaton with my yeshiva, and we went up.
What color red was it?
Like what color red?
Red means red.
Yeah, it was red.
It was like this color red.
Yeah, it was.
And that was, I don't know, I saw the pictures, everyone was talking about a par aduma. Those things looked orange, those things looked brown.
No, it looked,
I don't know.
It looked like this.
Yeah, what? It looked like that mamish, that's it, mamish red.
Like
Okay.
this, or maybe a little lighter.
And you have to know, so again, you have to know what exactly the shade of red is. I don't know that we have a Messiah on the redness of a paraduma. I mean, maybe what you're saying is red is taka, what a paraduma is, but again, you would have to check it very thoroughly to make sure that there's no black hairs, no white hairs, because even the Tanoim that hold that it's allowed to have some sort of black hairs, but it can't have too many. It has to have minimal black hairs, minimal other colors of hairs. Okay? So again, it has to be tamima. That it needs to be completely red. Asherein b'mum. Ashelei ola ola ha'oil. So let's see Rashi and let's talk about a couple of stuff that we have over here in the pasuk. Says Azoi. Start from the beginning. Rashi says, Zois chukas haTorah lefisha hasatan v'umas ha'olam meinin es Yisrael. The Satan and the Goyim, they bother Klal Yisrael. Loimar. Ma ha-mitzvah hazois. What's this mitzvah about? Uma tam yeshba. What's the reason for it? Lefika chasa b'chukas. Chuka. Therefore, the Torah writes about it that it's a chayk. Gzeira himu lefanai. This is the gzeira. En lecha reshus lahara achareha. Don't think about it. Just do it. Do what I tell you. Don't think about it. You know, many times it's better for a person. You know, in some yeshivas, unfortunately, or fortunately for the yeshiva, but they don't encourage the bachrim to think independently, because they think independently, they'll start doing all kinds of things that don't fit with the rules and regulations of the yeshiva. It doesn't fit with the yeshiva system that they're in, right? Saying, and some yeshivas say it's just the opposite. They very much encourage independent thinking, right? When it comes to a chayk, when it comes to understanding certain kinds of mitzvahs, we are told about Kadosh Baruch Hu. We're not allowed to think about it. We're not allowed to try to understand it. Why? Because as hard as you're going to try to understand it, you won't be able to. So, the question obviously is over here, why is it called Chukas HaTorah? This is the Mefarshim will ask. Why is it Chukas HaTorah? It could be a chayk, but what's it got to do with Torah? What's the Torah got to do with anything? So good morning. The Recham HaKadosh explains that the whole inyan of Tumah V'Tahara, the whole concept of Tumah V'Tahara only exists because of the fact that we got the Torah. So I want to read a couple of lines inside of the Recham HaKadosh. I want to explain something. Why is this mitzvah referred to as Chukas HaTorah? Chukah, or Chukas HaToma, or Chukas HaTahara, right? So don't say that in order to learn Torah, a person needs to be tahar, because the Gemara says just the opposite. That a person can learn Torah even b'tumah, because ein divrei Torah mekablim tumah. And not only that, the Gemara says that just like a person who goes into water can be mitayr himself, so too a person who's ezik b'Torah can be mitayr himself. That doesn't mean halachically speaking a person can be yotze, but a person can be yotze from his tumah to tahara. But what it means is that there's a certain madrega of tahara that a person can access by learning Torah. Meaning if a person went into a room where there was a mace, and he became tamei mace, and then he sits down to learn Gemara, that doesn't take away from his tumas mace. Obviously, in the times of the Beis HaMikdash, you would have to get spritz with para aduma on the shlishi and on the shvi, on the third and on the seventh day, and then he would have to be tavil in a mikveh, and then he would have to bring a carbon, and then only after this whole process, he would be able to become tahar, right? So zok the Arachim HaKadosh kiloi matzinu l'Rabbi Seinu she'amru she'adarabba ein divrei Torah mekablim tumah afilu lamachmir b'balekeri metamish shetzarich b'en v'yom b'yim mitmei meshim l'tarm be'ezik HaTorah. Everyone agrees. There's nobody that says, and nowhere does it say, that a person who's tamei meis cannot learn Torah, right? Also, altogether, just think about it, right? By COVID, it was very interesting. You weren't allowed to do this, and you weren't allowed to do that. You had to be careful which it was on the surfaces, it wasn't on the surfaces, right? Yeah, with gloves, not with gloves. You spritz it, you don't spritz it. You soap and not soap, and you hand sanitizer with a mask, without a mask, right? Think about what it would be like when you're living with all the hilchas tumah v'tahara, right? So somebody went to a levaya, right? He went into the same room as a dead body, right? He goes home, yeah, touches the supper, right? His wife made him some eggplant parmesan, he touches the food's tameh. he touches his son, gives his son a kiss, he didn't see him after a long day. Son, there's tumah there. Alright? It's very interesting. We wash our hands after a levaya. It's not because of the tumah. It's because there's ruach rav from the mace. Right? Misa and tumah always go together. Right? The Sefer HaChinuch talks about it by Barichas in this week's parasha. That, which I want to talk about a little bit more as we go on. But, V'yisbar Inyan, Al Pima Sh'omer Perk Batu the Nazir, the Gemara says in Nazir Paska Rambam in Hilchos Tumas Mace. She'ein HaKusi Nasa Tamei Mace. A kusi, a guy doesn't become Tamei Mace. Why is that? She'im Noga B'Mace. If you touch a mace, or you carry the mace, it's as if you didn't touch him. When it comes to kusim, when it comes to goyim, there is no tumah whatsoever. It's like an animal that touched it. There's no tumah v'tahara. The whole sugi of tumah v'tahara exists only by Klal Yisrael. Why is that? The reason why Klal Yisrael is separated from all the other nations, if not for Matan Torah, if not for Kabbalah Torah, I don't want, thank you. No, I had right before I came. So, the reason is because Klal Yisrael was Makabal the Torah. If not, we'd be just like everybody else. So the differentiation, the main chiluk between Klal Yisrael and the Goyim is Kabbalah Torah. What does Kabbalah Torah got to do with anything over here? And from this point we tasted from the sweetness of the honey of Hashem's words. Pirush, this Tumah and Tahara all comes about from the Torah. They become an entity of Ruchnius, and what happens is that the other side, all the evil forces, they try to chapara in any kedusha, any Torah that they can. So now, once HaKadosh Baruch Hu created Klal Yisrael in the sense that we're very, very holy, so then the other side gets very, very jealous of us, and they try to do what they can to make us tamei, to try to trap us, so to speak. The tumah is going to chap onto us, and it's not going to want to leave us. If not for the fact that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us specific guidelines how to be metar ourselves. And when a person dies, there's also a lot of tumah there. But pasuk Adam Kiyam, like the pasuk is going to say later on, Yisrael metamim ba'oil, vein umas oil metamim ba'oil. That the only Yidden are metamim ba'oil and not a guy. If a person goes into, if a kayin, let's say, even nowadays kahanim are careful not to be metamim l'meis, right? Even these days we're careful, kahanim are careful not to be metamim l'meis. Interestingly enough, there were big tzaddikim that were careful not to be metamim l'meis altogether. The Vilna Gaon was not a kayin, but he was very careful not to go to Beis Olam, not to go to Kfarim. I know one of my rebbeim there was a funeral home next to the yeshiva, and there was always an awning there, he never walked under the awning. He's not a kayin, but he was careful not to be associated with anything with tumah. Why? Because anything that's associated with tumah, befrat tumas meis, is associated with death, and is associated with the dark side of Yimazuk. And we don't want to have anything to do with that. We believe in a Torah's chayim, and Klal Yisrael is chayim v'kayamim, and we want to live a life. We want to live a life of chiyus. We want to live a life with chayim. We don't want to live a life that is any shaykhis to misa, any shaykhis to tumah, or any shaykhis to all these kinds of things. The Ramban says an interesting thing. The Ramban says that the Ramban's explaining what's the pshat in the tumah and in the Tahara. So he says that really, and I don't see it inside, but really, if Vahusha Amru, but Tam Tumas Hameis, and the reason why there's Tumas Hameis, Be'etyo Shal Nachash, is because of the bite of the snake. Can if Tarim ben Neshika lo yitami min adin. Min adin, it should be that a tzaddik who's nifter b'misas neshika, that he just, he died a peaceful death. V'hu shamru tzaddikim einon metame. The Gemara says that tzaddikim are not metame. L'kach amar HaKosov says chukas HaTorah. That's why the Torah says, "Zois chukas haTorah kolema hanechkekes min haTorah v'Torah shabal peh." That dafka, a person who's Isaac Torah, really it should be that he won't become tamei when he dies. Al kein hi para v'hi aduma mimidas hadin. Aduma is red. It refers to the midas hadin. So v'nasa lelazar leosas lefanu afilu al yidezar. Right, but what's this business over here that Kabbalas HaTorah changed the status of Tumah and Tara? What's this all about? So we have to take it back to the lashon of the Ramban. Be'etesh al nachash. What's the nachash? Yeah. So what happened was that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world. Why? There are many reasons why, but one of the main reasons is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu should have a makom dira b'tachtainim that we should be able to connect to the Rebbeinu Shalom. L'heitiv. HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world that he should be able to be made to his creations, which means us, through the vehicle of learning Torah. What happened was, Adam Rishon was put in Gan Eden, and there was Eitz Hadas and there was Eitz HaChaim. And he had a choice, he had a bechira to choose either to eat from the Eitz HaChaim or he was going to eat from the Eitz Hadas. What happened is that he ended up eating from the Eitz Hadas. Yeah? You know, it's very interesting. You know, why is it that we're very curious? Why is it that we always want to know what's going on over here, and we always want to know what's going on over there, right? We never settle. Yeah.
Sort of like the Pandora's box. It's like a box that you shouldn't open, but if you open, then
very good.
Everything's happened. It's eventually going to be open. Human people cannot resist.
So the Ramchal, that's exactly what we're going to get to. The Ramchal writes in the place.
Why did Hashem do it if it's obviously impossible to resist it? Because if they stayed in Gan Eden, they would stay there forever.
Yeah.
Forever is,
Yeah, about this. This is what I was about to explain. That the Ramchal asked this exact question. What was the point? What was the tachlis of this? Right. So there would have been a certain amount of knowledge, or a certain amount of clarity, that Adam Rishon would have had if he wouldn't have sinned with the Eitz Hadas, right? But now that he ate the Eitz Hadas, it created a certain drive within him to know. And to know like we know today, with that certain curiosity, right? If he wanted to eat from the Eitz Hadas, everything would be so clear, there would be no need for curiosity. We wouldn't have this drive to go and accomplish things, because everything would have been accomplished already, right? But I don't want to talk about this too much, but that was a very good question. The Ramchal in Das Tvunis talks about it. Fine. Anyway, so Adam ate from the Eitz Hadas. Now, the problem was that a t'nai, a condition that the consequence, rather, that Adam Rishon got, and all humanity got from the fact that Adam ate from the Eitz Hadas, is that now he brought death upon the world, right? So if you look at Nefesh HaChaim and other Svarim, it explains that what happens when a person dies is that now his neshama goes back to the Kisei HaKavod, and it's a good thing. Right, there is a good side for that. I don't want to get too morbid over here to go through this now, but we're not. But the MS is that it's a good thing for the neshama. Okay, but what happens is that now, so till the point of the Chet of the Eitz Hadas, there was Ra and there was Toiv, right? So I'm going to throw out a very interesting idea. It says in Shulchan Aruch in Hilchos Rosh Hashanah that a person, that there's a minig that we don't eat egoism, we don't eat nuts on Rosh Hashanah. Why? Because egois is gematria chet. Egois, nuts, one of the reasons is because egois is the same gematria as chet, 17. Right? So, the Kotzker famously said that chet is also gematria chet, so don't do an avera either. And everyone's going to get so caught up in the minig of not eating nuts. So, they're going to forget about, maybe they're going to get angry, maybe they're going to get upset, maybe they're going to, maybe they're going to do a real avera. Right? So don't forget that chet is also gematria chet. That's what the Kotzker used to say. Okay, but the point is, it was very interesting, because Toiv is also gematria chet. Toiv is also gematria 17. So what's the difference? So fakert, right? There's a Hagah in a Rashi in Yeshaya that asks this question. Yeah? I'm not sure if it's Parak Yud Aleph or the beginning of Parak Chof Aleph in Yeshaya, where it asks this exact question. If Toiv is gematria chet and it's gematria egois, so why do we say that we shouldn't eat egois in Rosh Hashanah? fakert. All the other things that we eat on Rosh Hashanah are to have a siman tov, to have a good year. So we should eat nuts because it's tov, right? So let's get back to the Chet of Adam Rishon. Till the Chet of Adam Rishon, there was tov around the world. Don't think that there was no such thing as tov around the world. There was tov around the world, but the difference was that there was tov and there was ra. It was very, very clear. We were able to see, Adam Rishon was able to see with 100% clarity the difference between tov and ra. And the Ramban uses a lashon that the ra was gekelev, the Yetzer Hara was gekelev hamnabeach bachutz. It was like a dog barking outside. It was a completely external thing, the Yetzer Hara. What happened was when the Nachash convinced Chava, and Chava fed the food to Adam, so then that ra, that kelev hamnabeach bachutz, now went into the person's system, and now the Yetzer Hara is within us, and now we have an internal struggle called the Yetzer Hara. Okay, that's the mitzias of the Yetzer Hara. Fine. So now the job of the Avis, starting from saying the word tzaddikim from Adam Rishon till Avraham Avinu, but the job of the Avis was a certain recognition in HaKadosh Baruch Hu's creation of the world and HaKadosh Baruch Hu's hanhag of the world, to bring down the Shekhinah. The job of the Avis was to bring the Shekhinah down to this world. The Medrash says that after Adam Rishon was chayte, so besides the fact that he got chased out of Gan Eden, and besides for the fact that the Yetzer Hara was now within him and it was an internal struggle, the Shekhinah departed from this world. Adam Rishon in Gan Eden, the Shekhinah was there with him. It was a beautiful situation. It was a really good life. And the Gemara says that the Malachim were barbecuing meat for him and they were pouring him wine. It was like a beautiful, he didn't have to do anything. He was literally just sitting there, being davik in the Shekhinah, being mis'anagal Hashem, Lashon Misil Sishem, mis'anagal Hashem, Lenes Viziv Shekhinah. So that's what Adam Rishon was doing. Now he was chaytus, he lost all that. But besides for that, HaKadosh Baruch Hu took the Shekhinah away. Because a person that can't follow HaKadosh Baruch Hu's mitzvahs, the Shekhinah leaves him. Now, the job of the tzaddikim, the job of everybody really was to try to bring the Shekhinah back down to this world. So there were different steps of the Shekhinah's departure from the world. And starting from Avraham Avinu, the Shekhinah was brought down one level. Yitzchak brought it down to the next level. Yaakov brought it down to another level. Each one with their own midah, each one with their own specific hanhaga of however we can understand that the Shekhinah was brought down into this, the Shekhinah was brought back down, right? Obviously, the Gzeira of Misa was still around, right? Saying Avraham Avinu died, Yitzchak died, we know there was Misa by all of them, right? But, again, we find that there were people, the Gemara says that Eina Nachash Memes El Hachet Memes, right? And later in the parsha, when you had the parsha of Nachash and Nachashas, the snakes were killing everybody, so Hashem told Moshe to make a Nachash and Nachashas, the Simai say al Nes, and everyone should look at it, Baro I say, and whoever's going to look at it, they're going to live. So the Mishnah says, the Mishnah of Rosh Hashanah, he says, you think because a person looks at a snake, he's going to live, and if he doesn't look at a snake, he's going to die? Ela bisman shahayu Yisrael mistaken klape malo mishavdim eslibam lavim shavashu hamayim that you misrap. It means that a person was focusing his attention to Shemayim, which means he was focusing his attention that the Rebbeinu Shalom runs the world, right? So then they would get better. Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu is sending a report to a person who is saying, I believe in the Rebbeinu Shalom, and the Rebbeinu Shalom is called Yachel, and he can do everything for me. A person has to put himself into that matzav, into that belief. And then he'll get his refuah. Yeah? So it's Eina Nachash Memes, Ela Hachet Memes. Who causes us to be chayte? The Nachash. Where does the Nachash come from? So till Adam Rishon, he was outside. Once Adam Rishon was chayte, so then the Nachash is inside of us. And the Gemara says it's a tefillah. The Gemara in Brachas and Daf Tezayin Amud Beis goes through a list of a whole bunch of tefillahs that the Amiram used to say after they finished Min Esrei. And on Yuzayin Amud Aleph, the Gemara brings that one of the tefillahs was a Ritzonenu Lasis Ritzoncha. Our ratzon is to do the ratzon Hashem. Now, even if we don't feel like we have the ratzon, we be'etzim have the ratzon. I'll explain in a minute why. Right? Umima Akiv, who's stopping us from doing the ratzon Hashem? Se'or shebe'isa, the yeast in the dough, v'shibud malchias, and the cultures that we live in. Yeah, the culture that we live in is very difficult for us to stand firm in Yiddishkeit many times against that. That's very external. We have to make sure it doesn't seep in. But Se'or shebe'isa is a reference to the Yetzer Hara, which is a reference to that Nachash, which is a reference to the original issue of bringing the Yetzer Hara inside. Right? But Ritzoneinu lasses Ritzonecha, our Ratzon is to do the Ratzon Hashem. What is the Ratzon Hashem? The Ratzon Hashem is that we should do whatever. How do we know what to do Ratzon Hashem? So we learn. We learn Torah, we have a Shulchan Aruch, we know what we're supposed to do. But what does it mean? Right? So the Gemara says that if Chishiv lasses mitzvah v'nenas ma'ala lava kasav kilo asay. If a person wanted to do a mitzvah and there was an oinus and he wasn't able to do the mitzvah, so it's ma'ala lava kasav kilo asay. The Torah considers it as if he did the mitzvah. Obviously, it doesn't mean that he was lying in bed and he said, "Okay, listen, I'm oinus, I'm sleeping." It doesn't work like that. But the reason is because be'etzem, the way HaKadosh Baruch Hu created Klal Yisrael is that the default setting of every single Yid, no matter how far away he is from Torah and Yiddishkeit, is to do the Ratzon Hashem. Now, a person sometimes doesn't feel like he has the Ratzon to do the right thing, or he doesn't feel like he has any feelings towards Yiddishkeit at all. It doesn't matter, because somewhere buried deep down, there is a spark of Yiddishkeit within him that just needs to be uncovered and discovered, and then be brought, and then to fan the flames, as we say, and then he'll become better, a better Yid. So the point is, now there's Misa in the world. So what happened was the brothers sold Yosef and they went down to Mitzrayim. Yeah, it couldn't have been so favorable in the eyes of Hashem because there was a lot of punishments and consequences that happened because of Mechiras Yosef. And the Yidden were Meshubed in Mitzrayim. That goes back to the Bris Ben Absarim, why that whole story happened. And Mitzrayim was the Kor HaBarzel. Mitzrayim, we went through a lot of Yisurim. We went through a lot of pain. And that was to cleanse us, and that was to clean us, to prepare us for Matan Torah. Klal Yisrael had Yitzias Mitzrayim, tremendous Gilui Shechina on that night of Laila Kayom Yoyer, and then they traveled 49 days, 50 days until they got to Torah. Right? What was the Madrega of Matan Torah? The Madrega of Matan Torah was to regain that Hashras HaShechina, that Gilui Shechina that we had on Leil Pesach. Thing is like this. The Zachas Hasai. Really, HaKadosh Baruch Hu could have created the world in a sense that why do we have to go through this world with all the struggles, with all the pain, with all the problems? HaKadosh Baruch Hu should have just plopped us in Gan Eden like Adam Rishon. Good to go. What's the problem? We would love that. Huh? Why do we have to sit by red lights? We have all kinds of issues in our lives. If we'd be in Gan Eden, we wouldn't have these issues. So the problem is, there's something called Nama de Kisufa, bread of embarrassment. What does that mean? It comes from a Yerushalmi, it comes from a Gemara. That if I give you, imagine I come in, I don't know, next time we learn, imagine I come in and I give everybody a check of $10,000. You'll be like, of course you'll take it, but you'll be like, I didn't earn this. I didn't work for this, right? People have a difficult time taking things that they don't earn. I don't know today, Mamash looks like that, because everything's like, gimme, Kav Nash, Kav Shabbos party, gimme, right?
If you gave us $10,000, it's not like it's a random person on the street.
Okay, fine. But imagine it was more random, right? So, a person's embarrassed to look at that person in the face. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu created a world with the system that in order for us to get Schar and Olam Haba, in order for us to get to that Madrega, the way to do that is through hard work. And that's why we're in this world. And we have a goal. Imagine we'd be in this world without any goals. That would be terrible. Yeah? We'd just be rolling around like a bunch of mice. Yeah? We're not mice, we're people, we have Seich, we have Avodas Hashem in our lives. We live a Yiddishkeit. We live with Yiddishkeit. It's a whole different situation, right? So that's why we have to earn. We have to earn Lisaneg al Hashem Len Specific Shkinasei. So on the night of Leil Pesach, there was a tremendous Gilui Shechina. HaKadosh Baruch Hu had to take us out of there because otherwise we would have landed in Nun Chari Tumah, we would have been over, right? Even a Malach couldn't have came into Mitzrayim because of the Shreklach the Tumah was in Mitzrayim. HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'chvay devatzma had to take us out. But in a certain sense, we really weren't deserving of this. We weren't deserving of this, right? What did we do? I don't know, right? we had to work our way up. That's what Sfiras Omer is. We had to work our way up to these 49 days to be Mesakin different midas, to fix ourselves up, to make ourselves the proper keli to be Mekabel the Torah. Bar Kabbalah Torah, it was the greatest Gilui Shechina that ever happened in the entire history of the world. All of Klal Yisrael was on the Madreg of Nevi'im. It was a Nevuah. The fact that we heard on Arich Hashem Lekecha, that was the Madreg of Nevuah. The Shteit in Rishon, the Shteit in Chazal. Yeah? The problem was, so, we should all hope and wish, let's stay on such a beautiful Madrega. We didn't get rid of the Yetzer Hara totally. It does say in the Medrash that B'Shash Hashem Yisrael and Arich Hashem Lekecha was Nitzka Talmud Torah B'Libam. The Torah penetrated through their hearts, which means that they had a tremendous cheshek to learn. And that was going to be their default setting, that they should have a tremendous drive for Ruchnius and to be Davik B'Torah. It was this battle, the Yetzer Haras were knocked out of the system. The problem was that there was still something called the Erev Rav. And they created something called the Egel, which brought Misa back to everybody, right? When Klal Yisrael stood on Har Sinai, it was Pascha Zul Hamasa. They got rid of the Yetzer Hara. There was no more Yetzer Hara. He was gone. He was entirely out of the system.
Except by the Erev Rav still had their own Yetzer Hara?
Yeah, they weren't fully. You're asking a good question. The sugi of Erev Rav Bichlal is a little bit complicated, right? Because why did Moshe Rabbeinu agree to take them along to begin with, right? It's also in Chazal that it was a specific time on Moshe Rabbeinu that he did this, but we don't have time for that now, right? But the point is that they were the ones that caused this whole problem. So then we went back, we lost our Madrega of Har Sinai, and we have Yismach Shabbos. We say Yismach Moshe b'matnas chelkai. Moshe was happy b'matnas chelkai. What was that? So the Zach is that we know from the Gemara that the Malachim came down and placed 2 crowns on each and every one of Klal Yisrael's heads, one for Nasa and one Keneged Nishma. Yeah? But then, by the Egel, the Malachim came and took it back. Now take a look exactly at the Lashon of the Gemara over there, how the Gemara says that there were 600 Shishim Riboy Malachim came to bring us, each one brought 2 crowns, but by the Histalkos of the crowns, there was double the amount, because there was 1 Malach per crown, not a Malach bringing them 2 crowns. Okay, that's a turn of itself. But every Shabbos, because Shabbos is L'mayla Menachet, which we could talk about also. Shabbos is L'mayla Menachet because it's a day that we're completely davok in the Rabbeinu Shalom. Kol Malach Licha Asuya. We're living in that Gan Eden kind of lifestyle. Yeah? It's Ke'ilu, we can't do anything. Why is it that we can't do anything? It's not because, I can't be on my phone on Shabbos, so terrible. No, that's not what it's about. It's much more about the fact that it's a day that all we have is Ruchnius. A Shabbos Suda, good food, good drinks, that's Ruchnius. That's Shabbos. That's what it's about. Right? But Yismach Moshe b'matnas chelkai, because Moshe Rabbeinu comes every Shabbos and on a certain level brings us back those crowns. That's Yismach Moshe b'matnas chelkai. All those crowns went to Moshe Rabbeinu. Right? And now Moshe comes and gives it back to Klal Yisrael. So, after the Egel, we were able to be mesakin a little bit, right? But there was still a little bit of tumah floating around. Now, we know that the Gemara says that there were 4 people that were meis b'etish shel nachash. Right? The Gemara Shabbos goes through this whole sugya that the nachash isn't memis, but it comes from people's sins that they do. Right? So, what if a person doesn't sin? So Tosfos says there's no such thing. Because the pasuk says, "Ein tzadik baratz asher yaseh tov layachta." There's no such thing as a person that's perfectly free of sin. Well, let's say there is such a thing. Yeah? So why would he die? Because of etish al nachash. Because there's a gzeira. What?
Right after Yom Kippur, no one has a virus.
That's a good question. Right after Yom Kippur, what's the first thing that happens as soon as we're finished with the tefillah and Yom Kippur? We start Ma'ariv. What do we say by Ma'ariv? V'hurachim michaper ovain. What do you mean v'hurachim michaper ovain? I just spent the last 26 hours screaming and crying at Hashem Shem Mechel Mivol Ma'averis. What are you doing now? Huh? It's a good question. Yeah? Because it's not Yom Kippur anymore. So we lost, we lost a little
Someone
bit.
that's Misaba and Ava says that.
What?
Someone that like he has like mourn over someone that died. It also says he was a very
Yeah, there's a lot of things that say that Moichel Kol V'Noisa. Right, but the Zach is over here that the Ramban is saying that the reason why the Tam Tumas Hames is be'eter shel Nachash can have turned ben Ashikol Yitam min Adin. The Ramban is saying that a person who's Meis ben Ashikol, a person who never sinned in his life, really that person should not become Tameh. But who Shamar Tzadikim ain't a Metamen. Tzadikim, technically speaking, are not Metameh. And there's a sheet in the Gemara like this, to the point where there was different stories. There's a famous Taisus and Ksubis when that there was a Reb Chaim HaKoyen who was Metamed, who went to the Levi Rabbeinu Tam, and he held that it was mutter for him to be Metamed to Rabbeinu Tam, because Rabbeinu Tam was so kadosh and so tahar that there was no tumah when Rabbeinu Tam was nifter. Yeah, it was interesting. He was called Rabbeinu Tam, and the para aduma is tamima. It's the same exact lashon. The sherish hatara in Klal Yisrael is the para aduma, and Rabbeinu Tam is lashon tamima, which is a big. The Pesachim are up in arms with that story with the Taisus over there. What was the right that he had? We don't paskin like that, right? And he paskin that he could, right? But again, how do we perfect ourselves to get to the madrega of being disconnected from tumah, right? So it's by being isik b'Torah properly. It's called Chukas HaTorah, as Ramban, the Rechaim HaKadosh are saying, that it's nechkekes min HaTorah, it was carved out, it was created from the Torah, v'Torah Shabal Peh. And again, that Torah is mitaher. It's mitaher a person's nefesh, it's mitaher a person's guf. It brings a person who learns Torah understands what the concept of Kedusha is. So when a person walks down the street, he'll say, I can't look everywhere. I have to protect myself. You don't want all the schmutz from the street to go into my mind, right? I want to be protected. Because if I protect myself from this kind of tumah, not only am I going to, it'll be easier for him to learn on a very basic sense, but it is so much kedusha and so much tahara that's going to go into some. You know, the nisyanis that we have today are I don't know that there was nisyanis like this. That is so easy to get in touch with all kinds of dvarim asurim, and we protect ourselves from it, and we do a good job protecting ourselves. I mean, Yetzer Hara still exists. You know, don't kid yourself that there's no more Yetzer Hara, right? But it's going to come a day when there will be no more Yetzer Hara. And the Gemara Sukkah says that the day will come, Hakadosh Baruch Hu is going to take the Yetzer Hara and shechtim, right? And the tzaddikim are going to cry, and the Rishonim are going to cry. Tzaddikim are going to cry because to them, they you know, it's going to look so gewaldig to them. You know, it looks so difficult for them how to conquer the Yetzer Hara. V'afal pikin, they're still able to. They're going to be like so moved by it, like it's too much for them. And the Rishonim
says out of joy.
What?
They're gonna cry out of joy.
Yeah. And it says that the Rishonim are going to cry because it's going to look like the easiest thing in the world. It's going to look like thin threads because they could have done it, you know? So let's not waste our time and let's not fool around and say, you know, yeah, we'll do a little Yetzer Hara stuff. No. You don't want to be from that group of Rishonim. Nobody hears Rishonim. Kol Yisrael is Ba'amar Kol Tzadikim, as we spoke. So we have about another minute left. So I just want to read a lashon of a Rambam. Why does it work to be metaher yourself in a mikveh? What's this all about? Right? We know that that's what it's all about. But besides for paraduma, we know that a person can be metaher himself in a mikveh. So I just want to read the last lashon of Rambam, then the Vilchus Mikvahs, then the Perek Yud, I believe it is, Perek Yud Aleph.
What about washing your
Davar barer
hands?
v'galoi. It's something that's known and clear to us. Shehatumis v'ataris gzeris hakosav hein. Tumah and tara gzeris hakosav. It's not something that we fully understand. Also being toivel from tumah. Why? Because you go into the water, you become tahor. So it's not like it's dirt. It's a metaphysical thing. You don't see it. You don't see tumah. If you have spiritual eyes and you're able to see it, but it's not a physical thing. You don't see tumah flying on top of a dead body. You don't see that. Right? That you need to wash it off with water. This is where it's at. It's tola in kavanas halev. The Chachamim say, it's a Gemara, it's a Mishnah, Tova v'lo yuchzik, kilo lo tova. If he was tovel in the mikveh and didn't realize what he was doing, right? He didn't pay any attention to the fact that he's going mitoma l'tara. It's keilu lo tova, his tefillah did not help. V'afapik and remez yesh b'davar. There's a remez over here, Kishem sham mechaven libe l'taher. The same way a person has to be mechaven in his mind to be metaher, kevin shatov tahar, ava pishlein eschadish begufei davar, even though nothing happened physically to his body. Kacha mechaven libe l'taher nafshe mitumas hanafasha shemachshaves ha'oven v'deis harois. So too, a person who's constantly thinking to be metar his nefesh from all the tumas and all the machshavas, the days harois, which we spoke about, the swam machitzanim and all the apikorsim and all the different, whether it's coming from a yetzahara of avodah, whether it's coming from a yetzahara of gilui arayis, whatever it is, but all those things are to take away kedusha and to take away our machshava from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So if a person is mechaven liboy letar nafsha mitumas hanafasha shem machshavas ha'oven v'deis harois keivan shehiskin beliboy, once he made up his mind, livreish me'ois and eitzis, to separate himself and to pull himself away from these evil eitzis v'hevi nafsha b'mei hadas tahor, and he went into the waters of pure knowledge, which means he's connecting to the Torah. Harayu Omer v'zorakti aleichem mayim tahirim v'tahartem mikol tumeisechem mikol giluleichem ataraschem. Pasuk says, I'll throw water on you to be metahir you, and I'll be metahir you from all your tumis and from all your gilulim, which is avodah zarah. Hashem beracham of harabim mikol chetz va'over va'ashmi taharenu amen. Hashem, with His great mercy, should be metahir us from any kind of chet, ashma va'over. Amen. Have a great Shabbos. Have a good Shabbos, Chapa.